As I've talked to religious folks over the years, more than once I've been told that without religion, people don't have morals. That, even if the God at the core of this idea isn't real, SR, you can't push back on the fact that religion gives people values to live their lives by. So what are those values? How do we determine which ones are better or worse? And should we even criticize other people's values? Well, we have thoughts, and I'm sure you do too. So get your calls in and let's talk.
This is Skeptic Haven. Let's talk.
We're always partying backstage before. One day we'll put out a clip of all those silly things. But hey, welcome folks. Today is March 10th. I am your host, Secular Rarity, and joining me is the always wonderful Neil the 604 Atheist. What is up, man?
Well, I'm missing an hour's sleep for fuck's sakes
Yeah,
because of that
yeah,
stupid
that's
daylight saving time shit.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
anyway,
not
what
a
do you do?
fan, not a fan of that. And with that, we are glad that even though we still practice this archaic and very stupid policy around the world, actually, we're glad that you're tuned in to Skeptic Haven's Let's Talk. This is our Sunday call-in show, and yes, we have open lines right here, right now. And we want you to give us a call, 984-789-4787, or I think you can hit us up online as well. And I think that URL is scrolling right underneath my face at the moment, which is, I'm not going to say because I feel like you can read it. Yeah. So with all of that and Wes just grinding his teeth thinking, why do I invite these people on this show? How the heck are you, Neil? It is so good to see you, man.
I'm doing okay considering. My family's going through a little bit of an issue right now because my mom was diagnosed with colon cancer again. So
sucks.
I've actually put my show on a hiatus for the time being until she's out of the hospital. But we've been lucky now because she's out of the critical care area and she's put into her own room. So that is a good sign, but it's going to take a little bit of a long recovery because she's also diabetic and she also has some respiratory issues as well. So healing at her age is a slow process.
Yeah.
But we're there for her, and I want to be there for her whenever necessary, which is why I put the show on a hiatus for the time being.
Yeah, and you've got so many wonderful loyal fans and friends and just this whole freaking community that's there for you as well, man. And we're just all sending love all the time, man. And yeah, that just sucks, dude. That just sucks.
Yeah, well, we're dealing with it, and she seems to be in pretty good spirits most of the time. Although I spoke to her last night and she wasn't doing so good. But I'm like, sorry, Mom, because my back went out as well recently, and I haven't been able to go up there and see her in person. But I plan on doing so because I should be okay by Tuesday or Monday or Tuesday. So, but yeah,
good. Well, we won't work you too hard here today, unless somebody. Well, you never know, man. Honestly, I've found ways to injure myself in all kinds of ridiculous places, but
me too.
We're hoping we get some spicy calls, and maybe we can, work you a little bit. But I know that you have some thoughts on religious values. What the heck are they? Are they valuable? What are they, man? What are religious values? When you hear that term in this space, what comes to your mind?
Well, as we were talking about earlier, I just think of values as being values. Some of them are worthwhile, some of them aren't. And when you tie something like religiosity to values, then things can go pretty squirrely. I think any values that religious or religions in general hold can also be held by secular means or secular people that don't have the baggage of religion attached to it. So a lot of these religious values often carry a or else type of thing at the end of it, right? And I don't think that that's necessary. But values are values, and I think we all hold what we consider to be good values for the most part. And I don't think anything needs to be tied to religion. I think we can have good values without religion. And I know that theists are going to argue against it. How can you have these types of values without God, right? But I think I have decent values, and I don't need a God for it.
Yeah. So what are some of those decent values you think, you don't need a God to have? What give us an example or two.
All right. Well, let me. One of the basic ones that I use or say a lot, or have in the past, anyways. I was one of the things I took probably from my spell within Wiccan times back in the day.
Well, I
And
guess
you harm
we
none.
did there. Spell with Wicked. Sorry, that was
Yeah,
good.
right. And you harm none. Do as you will.
Mm,
And I think that is pretty much a bottom line type of a value that I think, as long as you're not hurting anyone or not intentionally hurting anyone, a lot of things we do can sometimes end up with somebody, you know, getting something, I guess, hurt, I guess. But as long as your intentions are decent, and you don't hurt anyone, then you can do whatever you want. Just, as long as it's beneficial to not just yourself but other people around you.
so like, just throwing it out there, just as an example, maybe say an organization that would actively recruit individuals of a particular sexual orientation and then berate them into uh, changing, quote unquote, their
No, I
attraction.
know where you're
Would you
going
say
with
that?
this.
Would you say that's one of those values that does no harm, do as you will thing, or is that?
No,
Would you say
no,
something?
no.
Okay,
There's obviously in my mind there's intent behind that.
yeah.
There's this false, I guess, start where, oh well, you are who you are, but come and join us, and then we can
Mm.
change you. Like somehow you're going to change that person, who they are at their core, and I don't think that people should do that.
Yeah, that seems a
Well,
little.
okay, see,
Go
there's
ahead.
so many, like, I mean, there are certain people that could value some, I guess, help in certain aspects. I don't want to get too specific, but there are some people who, in their core, are not good people and could value
Sure.
some help
They're
in
doing lots
regards
of
to that.
harm
But
to others, and they want to stop doing
right,
that harm. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
sure.
exactly. But I think most of us aren't that way. I think
Yeah.
most of us have decent value core, or core values, I should say.
Yeah, and I used I'll be honest, folks. I was a little disingenuous with that example I was bringing up. I was kind of purposefully trying to push
I
Neil
figured.
down a route. Yeah. It wasn't really well hidden, in my opinion. But it I specifically use that example of torture that is found almost exclusively, if not exclusively, in religious communities, because I think when this question of religious values comes up, oftentimes there is, of course, the discussion about, can you have values and morals without the religion and blah blah blah. But I think that can sometimes bog us down into actually, not being able to call out the values that are clearly religious, that are also clearly demonstrably harmful.
Harmful, yeah. Yeah.
And it's one of those things that I don't think we should ever stop looking at that. Absolutely, we need justifications on our side. We need to talk about, what secular values are, and how you can get to a lot of these conclusions that so many people around the world hold. I think if you went pretty much anywhere in the world, and you walked up to somebody and you said, "Hey, look, let me give you a scenario. You tell me if you think this is okay or not." There's a little kid walking on the side of the road, just minding their own business, skipping along, whatever, right? And some guy comes up out of nowhere with really no other reason than just seeing the kid harmed. And the guy just kicks the kid and kicks the kid over, and the kid's in pain. Do you think that's good or bad? I really do think the vast majority of us, without any reference to a deity, without much justification needed, just go, yeah, that feels bad. Like, we're just causing harm for no reason. That's just wrong, right?
Y- you
Um,
know,
Go ahead,
And
please.
I think that if most of us were sitting out there, religious or not, and we see somebody mistreating a child in public,
Hmm.
I don't think the first thing we think of is, "Oh, good God." Like,
Mm,
we don't think of
right,
a deity of any kind. We say,
right.
"Wow, that person's a real dick, and they're mistreating that kid. Should I step in to do something?" I guess you'd have to depend on whether or not it would be safe to do so. But if I
Of course,
was, I mean, I'm pretty intimidating. As you
you are
know,
your big guy.
you've met me. All right, so I would probably step in. Actually, not probably. I most likely would, as long as the conditions were okay to do so. Right. So.
Right. And I think, again, that's one of those things we we absolutely need to highlight, and we need to talk about, on the non-religious side, on the secular side. Um those conclusions and those understandings that we get to that have no reference to supernatural or deity or a
Mm.
book from a long time ago. um but I don't think that means that we shouldn't absolutely hardcore call out the garbage values that are exclusively from religion. So for instance, another one that comes to mind, I'm sure you have come across this once or twice, Neil. um, there's this kind of vague concept about purity, so to speak. And oftentimes this concept is fairly focused on women, let's say, and a specific aspect of their womanhood, so to speak, as it seems to be presented. It's this silly concept of virginity. There's this
Mhm.
idea that somehow sex makes you impure. Is this
Mhm.
something? Do you feel like this is a concept, a value that one can really reasonably get to without a religious backing?
I think it's a religious backing that drives that type of thought,
Mm, that's
right?
the majority of where it comes from, you're saying?
I think so. I think that
Yeah.
the whole purity thing was born in a religious mindset.
Yeah.
That's why you read about that kind of stuff in religious texts and scriptures and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So
Definitely.
I mean, and they're preferred, I guess, to the pervy old guys from 2,000 years ago, I guess. But and I think that's just bled itself into society over the years.
Mm,
And once a girl or a woman loses her virginity or whatever, or their virginity, um, then they're no longer considered worth as much,
mm,
so to speak, right?
mhm.
Somehow
Yes.
their value drops afterwards, and I'm like, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
I don't personally. I don't fall for that bullshit, anyways, because it's like the opposite for guys, right?
Right, right. It's a status
Traditionally, anyway.
symbol.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it makes you more
Marches on belts
desirable.
and
Yeah.
right, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It's just that pervasive, sexism that has, just seemed
Mhm,
to encompass all of human society. And again,
absolutely.
I think I think it is possible to get to that conclusion purely from a secular lens. I just think that the flaws would be so much more evident in that construction, right? Because ultimately, I think you would get back to that kind of Wiccan mantra you mentioned, which is something that we find very much through like secular humanism, right? About this
Yeah, pretty
not
much,
doing
yeah.
harm to others. And so ultimately, you couldn't get to this,
It's like a
same
golden
sense.
rule kinda thing.
Exactly, right? And it's much better, I think, than the golden rule, because if you do come across somebody that does have this idea like, "Oh no, my God hates gay people, and so you being
Mm,
gay is bad. I need to stop you from doing that." It's like, "Well, hang on a second. Do unto others as they would do unto me" seems weird in this scenario, because I don't want that. I don't like that. That's a very bad conclusion I think that individual is coming to.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
Right. So this idea of, not doing harm to others, and really that concept being the driving focus, as opposed to, of course, a divine command or an afterlife, I think is so much more valuable. And actually, I know this might be a little controversial, Neil, but I actually think it is what people are doing. They're just not always doing it well, like they're just not always being consistent how they apply it. I think when I go out there and I look at these moral systems, whether they're religious or secular, it seems to me that well-being is the underpinning. It's just a matter of how they focus the well-being. For the Christian, the ultimate well-being is after you die. That's when you really have to make sure you made the right choice. You got to be in the good place instead of the bad place.
Yeah, it's silly as fuck. It's ridiculous. I mean, because you're wasting your time here thinking like that, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it feels to me that it leads to more of those a proliferation of those negative values that oftentimes get pushed down in this conversation, because again, so many of the times the conversation happens with a religious person, like with myself, where it goes, hey, you're an atheist, you can't judge right or wrong because of that. And then I go, well, yeah, I can actually. That's just, like all people.
Where do you get that from?
Yeah, like that's ridiculous, and we don't really get back around to the, but based on your value system, here are the things you think are good, and here are the things you're actively trying to enact, so it frustrates me, and I don't want to lose sight of that. Are there any religious values you can think of, Neil, that come like exclusively from the religious lens that you just go, oh man, that's definitely bad? Something that you also dislike. Like we've talked about conversion, torture. We've talked a little bit about a couple of others,
about genital mutilation, or nuclear family, or
that's a pretty bad one. Yeah.
Or, yeah. I mean, there's a bunch I can probably pull up, but I think now I was circumcised as an infant, being raised in Judaism. That's pretty much the thing that happens when you're a baby. I don't remember it, which is probably a good thing.
Yeah.
I don't think I have any psychological scars from it. I think, yeah, whatever. It's just, it is what it is. And then I nothing I can do about it now. So I live with it, but I don't think that it's a necessity. And I don't think that it necessarily needs to be done in these days. So that's a value, I guess, because it is a value because it's supposed to bring your relationship closer to God, sort of thing, right? The whole, I know, the Abraham tribute bullshit stuff that goes on there, right? So, so that's one, and of course this idea of a nuclear family, as they call it, the mom, the dad, and 2.5 kids, that kind of thing, right? Or a girl and a boy, or et cetera, all the other nonsense that they try and push there. And then, of course, you have the families that have the multitude of kids, right? Like tons of kids, that kind of thing. But why? What Especially a lot of these families can't even afford to have a few kids, and they keep going on, right? Yeah. And that becomes damaging to them. So, yeah, I don't know. I guess those are just a couple of ideas, I think.
No, I think those are all, very, very good ones. Again, all of which seem to me to very much have a religious underpinning. And I just think it's really important that when we do have this discussion about values, that we don't just allow the conversation to be dominated by the religious telling us as atheists, hey, you can't even play in this space, you know, because that's just bullshit in my opinion, especially when we can stand there in a room with other people and go, okay, fine, you know what, let's pretend I don't have any morals. That's still wrong. Does anybody disagree? You know, raise your
Right.
fucking hand if anybody disagrees with this. And surprise, surprise, you know, you just more often than not, nobody's raising their hand. So anyway, I'm always somebody that's like, hey, you know, make sure you're not kicked out of this conversation just because you're non-religious, and actually get in there and say, okay, fine, well, the religious people have values, let's talk about them. And you know, that is a great segue, I think, to grabbing our first caller. You want to talk to some people, Neil? I mean, that's what we're here to do, so contractually you have to say yes.
All right, well then, yes.
Perfect. That's the right answer. We are gonna go down to Florida. We're gonna talk with Andrew. Him is a Catholic and wants to talk about how cohabitation is evil. Hey, Andrew, you're talking with SR and Neil. What is up?
What's up, gentlemen?
Hey,
How you doing, Andrew?
Pretty good. Happy Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
You too.
Mm-hmm.
You too.
Okay, so I get. Thank you. I guess I'll make my point and then I'll hear your rebuttals.
Sure.
Here's the statement: cohabitating couples experience more physical aggression, psychological aggression, and sexual coercion than married couples, according to a study by Johnson and colleagues. And so this is a secular study, and I guess atheists, or secularists who lean progressive, most secularists lean progressive, promote cohabitation rather than religious values. So how do we explain the negative consequences of the physical, the psychological, and sexual aggression and coercion?
Sounds to me like you went out there to find something that was going to be right in your corner, first of all. Second of all, I know myself, okay, this is Canada, so there may be different statistics here where I live, but I know people who cohabitate that are perfectly fine, you know, and then I've known couples where I had to actually go in and rescue a friend of mine from an abusive relationship and move them away from that person. So yes, there are going to be couples that are going to be in those types of situations where it's not very good and it's not very moral, if you will say, if you want to say that. But usually that was down to some sort of violence, and there are people like that out there. And I mean, I don't know what the stats are here in Canada for that same type of study, but I've seen both sides of the fence. Now, luckily, maybe for me, anyways, is I've seen the positive side more so than the bad side here. But I don't know what you might have to say about that, Elliot.
Well, I think it's very interesting, and I actually tried to pull it up real quick, and I don't know if it's the exact same study, but there is something interesting that jumped out to me, that they found cohabitate. Now, I'm not sure how you're using the term cohabitating, Andrew, but it seems to me that the way that this study is using the term cohabitating is specifically individuals of opposite sex or gender that are living in the same space, but not in a romantic or intimate way.
That would be
Because
me.
and the reason that I say that, and I think that's deeply important for this understanding here, is specifically because they said cohabitating couples were more likely to report aggression, 31%, in their relationship than married, 23%, or dating couples, 18%. So it seems to me they've broken this up into three separate groups, right? We've broken it up into groups that are, you know, actually intimate, right? In a legal framework with this actual marriage, intimate with each other in this more social way, and then not exactly in that type of intimate romantic-y way, right? So again, in part, like, a lot of that kind of makes sense to me in a couple of different ways, and I don't mean to just like hand wave this away. It just, that data seems pretty logical to me, because it kind of seems like it's possible that as individuals are learning to live with other people, that may be some of more of the first times they've been in this space, as opposed to somebody that may be married or dating and living with somebody, because that tends to be something that happens not 100%, of course, but that tends to be something that's a little bit more thought out and a longer, time frame. So again, like, a lot of this doesn't seem like it's that problematic. It doesn't really feel like it's that much of a gotcha or anything, man. I think this information is pretty understandable. So yeah, I'm not particularly flummoxed by this, I guess. But yeah, what do you? I know we shouted a lot. Yeah, it's a good word. Yeah, I got a little calendar every day. It gives me a new one. No, what do you think about all that, Andrew?
Wow. Yeah.
I know it was a
I
lot.
don't think you believe. Yeah. Let me.
By the way,
Okay, so
Andrew,
that. Yeah.
real quick, I cohabitate with an ex-girlfriend and have been for 12 years.
Bum bum bum.
13 years, actually. Yeah, 13 years. Yeah. And things are great. We have a great.
Yeah. I don't think you'll do anything harmful.
No, hell no. Well, not intentionally, anyways. I've upset her feelings a couple times because I forgot to order something for her when I ordered food. And she's like, "Well, what am I, roast beef?" Or, what do you, I don't know what the expression is, but yeah. And I was like, "Oh,
Chopped
shit, well,
liver?
here, you can have half of my food." And then we sort of resolved that. But anyway, you get the point. I cohabitate myself. So.
Okay. Yeah. This is the secular morality principle is harm. Morality is generally defined by what causes most harm. If cohabitating causes more harm than marrying, then
it can.
Why?
Yeah, that's the right. This is the problem with your analysis, Andrew. Is that you're looking
let
at
him finish first.
Okay,
let him finish first.
Go ahead, Andrew.
Thank you. Yeah, the harm principle. If more people, if cohabitating is better, does the data show that it causes more harm? If it causes more harm, shouldn't we just say, okay, there's no God, but ideally you should be married if you live together because it causes less harm?
Go ahead, Neil.
Could come to that conclusion, but you say you have to add the caveat, as I said earlier, that it can cause harm, because it doesn't necessarily cause harm every single time. So the potential is there, and also I don't think this really falls under the necessity for a God in all of this. And maybe you're right. Maybe being married might be better if you're living together. But I've lived with many of my girlfriends, for quite a few years, and usually there's never been any issues. And sometimes you just fall out of love and you move apart and they go on their own ways. I'm still friends with most of the people I've ever been in a relationship with. There's only a couple that kind of, for whatever reason, ended up hating me. I'm such a dick. But anyway, but yeah, I mean, I don't see how this. Yeah, maybe, but I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. I was cheated on a couple of times, so there's that. But I don't know. But you're right. I mean, it can be potentially harmful, but I don't think that it will be every time. So.
Yeah, and I think that really is where the issue is with what you've done with the information in this study. The information in this study does not conclude that cohabitation relationships are harmful, period, close the book. That's not what this is saying, right? It's saying that compared to these other types of ways that people can be in a relationship, that people can live together, like, this one seems to have a little bit more aggression reported. Because again, we're talking a difference at the lowest dating couples of 18%. So the best that we're doing is still 18%. Okay. The worst that we're doing is 31%. And all we've got so far. Again, because I do have this study up right now, but obviously I haven't had time to like go through all of it live on air, man. But what they say is reporting aggression. Cohabitating couples were more likely to report aggression. What are they using as aggression? What are they terming as aggression? I believe it's physical aggression. I believe
Could be
it's
verbal too. It's
that, but
probably
it
more
could
likely
be,
that.
right? But in either scenario, this does not ultimately conclude that cohabitation is bad. That's not what it says. It just says that there's some more problems that seem to exist in this particular space than in others. That would lead me to
Ooh, I never
say,
thought.
okay, yeah, that would lead me to say, oh my gosh, why? Why are we finding more aggression in this particular environment than these others? Maybe there's something that we can do to help cut that down. Maybe not, though. And if ultimately, Andrew, we find totally cohabitation will always have this greater risk, I will absolutely be on the front lines with you, standing there to say, hey, everyone, think a little bit harder about cohabitating because you have a slightly higher percentage of having these negative consequences, but not cohabitation is bad. End of sentence, right? Those are massively different stances and conclusions. Neil, what was your thought? Then we'll kick it right back to you, Andrew.
I went on a different path here, and then
Yeah, please. Yeah,
forgot what I
change
was going to say. But I think cohabitation with people that aren't in a relationship may be more what's the word I'm looking for? Maybe more because there's no ties of any
Powerful?
kind. They're just living. No more. I think it's more possible that there could be some aggressive. Well, not beneficial. Some more aggressive behavior because there's no tie there. But I don't think that points to anything religious or anything. Maybe, but I also found another stat that. What about divorce rates? They're higher amongst religious people than non-religious people. So what does that tell you?
Oh, wow. Okay. It tells me here that cohabitating couples have higher divorce rates than those who waited until marriage to live together.
No, but
divorce.
Yeah, you can't divorce in a cohabitation. Remember, they're specific. These three groups are non-overlapping here.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I mean two groups. Group A, they waited until marriage to live together, and then Group B, those who cohabitated first, and to see if they were compatible, and then they got married. It says that those who waited.
That's not in the study. That's not in this study. That is not in this study. That is not what this study is talking about, unless you're talking about a totally different study, which we can absolutely bring up and try to go through live on air like we're doing with this one. But again, that seems like you're making a jump. Yeah, go ahead, Neil.
I think regardless of your religious belief, I think moving in with somebody and giving it a trial run before you actually tie the knot and make it official is not a bad idea at all.
Yeah, I agree.
Because if it becomes to the point where, well, guess what? We can't live together. Maybe this whole marriage thing, we should rethink it.
Right.
So I think that may be beneficial.
And according to this study, those groups of people that take Neil's advice right there would be considered in the dating couples category, which has the lowest percentage of aggression amongst the three groups. Checkmate, atheist. We've won. I'm just kidding, Andrew. I'm sorry. I just had to have a little fun. No, please. We'll give you some time to respond to all that.
I forgive you.
No, it says divorce rates are higher than married people.
Like buy before you buy it.
Yeah,
buy before you buy it. Makes sense, I guess.
Sure.
And colloquially, but the data shows that they actually divorce more often. So the goal is to try it.
Where do you say that? Because that's not in this study. That's not what this study is about. Are you saying that's in this study, or are you saying that's in another study?
I can give you that other study if you want.
Sure. Yeah, go for it. I'll try and see if I can find that one. You just kind of gave me just a random string of words that I had to look up as opposed to like any particular thing for
Cool.
that one. So, but yeah, what is the title of this study?
Brown Sanchez linking cohabitation to marital stability by the Journal of Marriage and Family.
Sweet.
So like people cohabitate. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Well, I gave you the study, so I don't know if you guys want to make a point. Then
I'm gonna see if I can find it. So please go ahead. I mean, again, we're doing this just literally live on air. I'm just pulling this up, so it's not like I've had any time to read this or anything. But also, again, I think yeah, Neil and I have been pretty clear that if there is really, really good evidence to indicate that cohabitation is just constantly causing harm to people, that we aren't for it. But so far, the information you've presented, and I'm kind of leaning to the side that this next article will be something similar. So far, the information has leaned to the side of, hey, there is a potential for more problems in this particular relationship, which my response would then just be, yeah, let's figure out why those problems exist and why they don't exist in other types of relationships. I thought Neil's point a second ago was really good about the connections and the ties to the other individual and them being stronger in a dating or married relationship. I think that might be something to look into. But yeah, please, I'm still trying to find it. I'm just pulling this up live, so
yeah,
I don't have a bunch of
the ties when you're married are stronger.
But are they stronger than dating?
It produces better relationships.
Are they stronger than dating, though? Like, are they demonstrably stronger than dating?
I found another stat. I can't
ahead.
find out where the hell I found. So the people who marry quite young, religious or otherwise, there's a higher divorce rate amongst those people as well.
Oh,
I
that's interesting too. So now are you completely against young people marrying, Andrew? Are you completely against it? No, I'm just kidding. Again, seriously. But like
I am.
you see how like that piece of data is now just something we just incorporate into the whole. And now we just, next time somebody that's 18 years old says, hey, I'm getting married to another 18-year-old, we go, hey, maybe take a little more time. Maybe it's a good idea to think about it, as opposed to just being like, all right, can't fucking do that anymore, you stupid children. You're gonna get divorced later on. Like,
well, I mean, if they're coming to you asking for advice,
yeah,
like if 60% of people go skydiving, they fall and die. You want to kind of tell them, hey, here's the statistics. So
yeah, but do you ban skydiving?
Don't
That's
do that.
the
I've
question.
done that.
Yeah, that's the question.
Fun.
That's the question, man. Do you take that one piece of data and take it to the point so far as to say nobody gets to do this anymore? This is so dangerous of an activity, right? Is that the line for you?
I'm sorry. I didn't catch the question. Can you repeat it?
The analogy about skydiving, comparable to this situation. An individual comes asking for your advice, and you go, hey, there's all this information that seems to maybe, point towards it not being so great of a choice. Do you then take that information and go so far as to say nobody gets to do skydiving? I feel like this was a pretty direct question. We might have lost you.
You asked me for my opinion.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I would just give him that advice, and I see a lot of I see a lot of secular people promoting.
You're not answering the question, Andrew. Hang on. You can talk about the bad things that we secular, atheists, non-religious, heathen, whatever. We're terrible. I got it. We're ruining the world one step at a time. Fine with that. All I'm asking is, pretty simply, cohabitation. Let's just take all of these numbers as exactly fucking true, man. I am totally on your side now. Cohabitation absolutely seems to indicate a greater risk for physical violence amongst the individuals, a greater risk for divorce later. I still haven't found that study, but I am still trying. But let's say we do accept all of that. Does that mean, in your eyes, we should ban cohabitation?
No, not ban it. That's a
Cool.
little.
See? So then
That's
we're
good.
on the same page, man. We're not on opposite sides of this. It sounds like all three of us are on the side of being like, hey, yeah, if there's some
Now-
more potential problems here, let's look into that and try to mitigate those. Go ahead, Neil, please.
I'm on board kind of with something that Andrew said. You could sit down with the couple that wants to cohabitate and tell them, you could say, hey, listen, this is what the statistics show. I'm not against you doing it, but as long as you know what the statistics show, might give you a better chance of success, right? So that's a good way. I mean, you want to sit down with them and say, hey, this
Absolutely.
is what we have learned societally. Take that to heart and do as you please.
Yeah, and I'm on board with that too. Do you think there's anything there, Andrew, that Neil just said that you're like, no, that's bad. That's too far.
That's a good value, if you ask me.
No, I agree. That's a good way to approach it.
Yeah.
They call it
Promote
forewarned is forearmed.
That's good.
Did you catch that, Andrew? It's called forewarned is forearmed.
Yeah, and I think that is more oftentimes than not what I hear in these secular spaces. More oftentimes than not, I am not hearing somebody stand up and saying, hey guys, I'm an atheist, or I'm a godless heathen. And what I'd like to tell you to do is start cohabitating right the fuck now. Everybody needs to do it. Everybody needs to do it. I just, that's really not what I'm hearing. What I am hearing, though, is people being told pretty specifically from a very different side, hey, no, don't cohabitate. And then those people often say things like, I'm super religious. And that's them. That's not me putting that label on them. They're doing it. They say, I think cohabitating should be banned, and it's because of my religion. And so it sounds like, Andrew, and I don't know for sure, so I want to make sure, I want to ask you directly, would you be on the same side as me and Neil to push back on those individuals that say we should ban cohabitation because of my religion? Would you be against that, or would you be for that?
I do not want to use the law to ban it. I do not want to
Sweet.
ban it.
Sounds like we're on the same page, man. Sounds like you were one step closer to becoming a secular humanist just like us. I'm teasing with you again. I'm sorry, Andrew. I don't mean to poke so much fun at you, man.
You can still carry around religious baggage and be a humanist as well.
That is true. That is true. But no, I feel like, yeah, ultimately the three of us are very much on the same page. And it feels as if all three of us are here saying, look, we don't think this particular type of arrangement between two consenting adults, in and of itself is actually wrong, especially not to the point that we should legislate against it. We do have some concerns, though, and we want to make sure that people are properly informed and making the decision that will most likely lead to the least amount of harm and suffering for them and the others involved. Again, I think this data, I really think what this data indicates more than anything is just that, hey, maybe we need to figure out what's going on with people that are cohabitating. Maybe there's a deeper issue that is causing. I have some wild speculation I could throw out, but it's probably not the best time to throw wild speculation. So we'll save it for another time. But Andrew, yeah, any other thoughts on that, man, before we go on or talk about other religious values or grab another call? Any other thoughts, man?
No, just let's make a better world. Glad we found some common ground. Have a nice evening, gentlemen.
Yeah, you too.
We did, I think.
Yeah, I
Good
thought
call,
that.
Andrew.
Yeah, seriously, and I think that's something we really do strive for. I think both of us individually, as well as Skeptic Haven as a whole, like we want to kind of cut through some of the nuance and really get to some of the important parts of this stuff. I mean, at the end of the day, okay, yeah, man. Hey, look, if you want to come up here and you want to say, man, there's this thing that's going on that causes people some bad times. Look, I'm with you. I'm going to be there standing going, hey, we need to warn people. We need to let people know about this. But of course, that question has to come up because we live in a society. Whether people like it or not, we have to interact with other people. We just freaking have to,
We
you
do?
know? Yeah, I mean, yeah, sorry, Neil. Yeah, sorry. You're probably gonna have to for the rest. I mean, for the rest of your life too. It's probably, but once your life is over, at least it'll stop. But sorry, terrible. But because
Dun, dun,
because
dun.
that's the case, sometimes we just need to get right to the, okay, cool. So what do we do about it? Like, what do we do about that then? Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I hadn't seen those statistics. I hadn't heard any of that. That was awesome that it was brought to my attention because again, now my question is, now my bone to pick is what the fuck is going on in these cohabitation relationships? Like what's happening here that is causing so much more of a problem than these other relationships? And is there something we as a society
I
can
need
do?
to know more about that study too, like how many couples were talked to, how many,
Yeah.
was it a small one, a large one, are the numbers correct, in overall, like
Mhm.
there's so many questions.
Yeah. And of course, we can't really pull anything up right here and just run
No,
through it
it's not school.
entirely. But we try to do our best. And again, I think given all the toys to play with, we still, all three of us, got to a place where we said, hey, look, we're not in the boat of legislating and restricting others, right? We are going to be in the boat of offering our suggestion or offering our warnings, because of things. But again, it's a totally different step to say, hey, nobody gets to do this now.
Yeah.
Are there things that cross that line? Maybe. Yeah, maybe. But we have another call, so we're probably going to take that unless you have any other thoughts, Neil. I don't want to cut you off.
I'm good. I think we covered it, and I'm just glad that we were able to find some common ground.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Right?
absolutely. I think that's always a good way to kind of start off, and just a nice thing instead of we were gonna yell. We were thinking about it, but Neil said he needs to save his voice. Supposedly he's like some rock star or something. Whatever.
Let's not get carried away.
Well, we are going to grab another call. We are talking with John, him in Canada, wants to talk about some
Right.
predictions
Awesome.
in the Bible. So this is going to be fun. Hey, John,
Oh,
you're chatting
geez.
with Neil the 604, Atheist and Secular Rarity. What is up?
Fellow Canadian, eh?
Oh, yeah, I am Canadian. Are you Canadian?
Yeah.
Neil is. Yeah.
Vancouver.
I'm from a real country down here in the U.S., but no, I'm teasing.
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
sorry,
yeah.
guys. I'm sorry.
You forgot a word in that statement. Between real and country.
I believe the word he's looking for is fucked. Real fucked country. Sorry, John.
All right, we
go
got
ahead.
our issues up here too.
Go
Welcome to
ahead,
the show, John.
Good. I was like to ask you, have you ever noticed that there have been predictions in the Bible that have come true?
No,
No.
I haven't. But if you have,
What I have
any that you
noticed,
can think of,
what I have noticed is very much like the quatrains from Nostradamus, people have found ways to make it look like they're all connected.
Yes. That sounds more familiar to my experience, Neil.
Mm.
Yeah, what do you think, John? You saying there are predictions that have come true?
Well, a lot of Christians out there are saying that the war in Israel is a prediction, saying that Egypt and all the neighboring countries will attack her in the future.
What about back in like the 40s when like more countries that are, in that region were fighting Israel? Don't you feel like that is more closer to the prediction in the Bible?
Previously it was, but it came into modern existence in 46.
That Israel was the Great Holocaust. I'm sure there's a passage in that book that someone could say alludes to that.
Wait,
I'm sure.
Yeah, hang on. Yeah, did you just say you're sure there's passages in the Bible that somebody can just pick out that allude to the Holocaust? Is that what you just said?
I'm not saying that the Holocaust will take place. Those words are actually in the Bible. I'm saying that there's a passage in there that someone could look and say that refers to the Holocaust.
Right, cool. I just wanted to make sure that you and I were on the same page there, because my next response to you, John, is going to be, do you see why Neil and I think that is a really terrible way of coming to a conclusion? If you already know that other people can and probably do just go to the Bible and pick a random sentence that kind of, sort of, maybe can be twisted into a way that it references
random
something.
sentences that are amongst the prophecies.
Sure, I guess. I don't know. You could take any sentence, call it a prophecy. But do you see why that's not a good way to come to a conclusion? Do you see why this makes me feel less confident about your conclusion about predictions from the Bible? It almost sounds like what you just kind of said there, to me, is what you're doing.
So I'm just saying how they think.
Yeah, I'm just saying, what distinguishes them from you? What's the difference between you saying, hey, predictions in the Bible are coming true right now, but there are these other people that could probably go flip through the pages and find something to make it sound like the Holocaust if they wanted to? What's the difference between the predictions that you're pulling out of the Bible and saying are happening versus them pulling the verses out and just kind of massaging the narrative? Does it make sense what I'm asking, John? Are you following what I'm asking?
I am following you, Mr. Rarity, and to be honest with you, I don't see a difference.
Okay, so do you find that problematic? Because it sounds like you find it problematic with the other people doing it. But if you're saying you're also doing the same thing, wouldn't that mean that you're also doing something that you find is problematic?
Oh, I just find it interesting how a book written 2024 years ago can. Okay, how can I put it this way? It can sort of mimic the current world that we are living in. Don't you find that amazing?
Do you find it amazing do you find it amazing that the Epic of Gilgamesh can be like used in the same way? Like, there's a story about this guy and he like does all these cool things and he goes on this like journey and he has like these struggles and he overcomes them and he becomes a better person and all that. Like, doesn't that relate to today? Do you find that particularly amazing?
Well, isn't that the story of Noah?
I mean, it was well before Noah, so maybe Noah's the story of Gilgamesh, but
kind of a ripoff.
Yeah,
but you got to remember something else, John. Many people today, and this falls not just within the realms of religion and scripture, many people today, we're human beings. We're easily duped, all right? And that's me included, right? I've been duped many a time in my lifetime. But people today seem to love to interpret vague statements as being uniquely meaningful, right? And that includes these so-called predictions, because the way they're print it up, you could literally, like silly putty with a comic book, you could literally fold that sucker out and make it something that you want it to be, right? We could do that with lots of stuff. You could probably take some of Shakespeare's plays, okay, and start reading it, and then, oh shit, I got to read between the lines of this statement here because it sounds like they made a prediction here, and the Hindenburg crashed in the same day, right? So that sort of thing, right? Like, you get where I'm coming from. Like, we'll take vague statements and to tend to process them as being somehow meaningful, and a lot of times uniquely meaningful.
I got you, but to answer your previous question, there is one difference between what those people are doing and what I'm saying. Do you want to know what it is?
Sure.
Your brain versus theirs?
Yeah, there is. The Bible predicted that humans would put their pride above their logic, and above the logic, and we would try to become gods, and that's precisely what we're doing.
Okay, so before I go into further here and really try to break that down, I just want to ask you, do you really feel like that's a prediction, John? Do you really feel like that statement that you just gave actually fits the criteria of a prediction? It kind of almost sounds like, to me, a random person walking into an auditorium filled with people and just saying something like, before the night is over, this room will put their excitement and pleasure over empathy. That just doesn't really have much tangible aspects to it that you can point towards. Like, anything could fit that statement, man. Like, how is what you just said a prediction? Before we even go into this whether or not people are trying to become gods themselves thing, but how is that statement a prediction in your eyes, John?
Well, look around.
Thoughts on this?
We're creating artificial intelligence. We decide who lives.
No, hang on. Don't go anywhere else, John. We're talking about the very first part of it. The first thing you said was about the Bible doing this prediction thing about human beings putting pride over logic. And that's what we're doing, you said. Then we went on to something else. All I want to do is focus on the first part. How is that statement a prediction in your eyes? What criteria does it hit that equals prediction?
Pride before logic.
Yeah, that statement. You said that was a prediction that's coming true. What I'm asking is, how is, like, maybe if I try it this way, okay, and then we'll go.
Isn't it always true?
Well, okay, yeah, right, but okay, let me. I'm going to give you two statements. You tell me which one sounds more like a prediction to you. Before the night is over, I will discover gold in my backyard. Okay, that's statement one. Here's statement two. Sometimes pens write in blue ink. That's statement two. Between the two statements, which one is more like a prediction?
The first one.
Yeah, I think so too. Now, between the two statements, okay, before the night is over, Neil will discover gold in his backyard. Statement one. Or statement two, humanity will put pride over logic. Between the two, John, which one sounds more like a prediction to you? I know. Yeah, I agree, because the statement in and of itself that you brought up to us isn't a prediction. It's just a vague statement. It's not anything that you have the ability to go back and go like, oh yeah, shit, this did come true. Neil did find gold in his backyard. If you do, by the way, you have to split it with me, Neil. But anyway, that was my little rant for a second. Neil,
I gotta go.
I know you just found the gold, guys. Get him. No, go ahead, Neil. I know you had thoughts on this.
Shit, I forgot what I was going to say now. Damn
I'm
it!
so sorry.
It
I'm
was
so
the whole.
sorry.
You
I
got me
know
all
I
excited
rambled.
about gold in my
I know.
backyard.
I'm
I'm
so
like, fuck.
sorry. Hey, by the way, did you know you can send super chats to Skeptic Haven folks and make
Just like
Neil and
gold.
I say stupid things on air? You can do it. No. But
Yeah,
yeah,
tons of mice got it right though. I'm more likely to strike maple syrup in the backyard than I am gold. So.
that is true. That is true. If you think of it, just jump back in at any point. Just cut me off.
Well,
Go ahead.
I think as human beings, it's like a form of pareidolia. I think we have our brains are just wired to sort of try to make sense of things, and I think it depends on how you were raised and what kind of things you hold in your mind about these sorts of things that you're going to unfold something into a line of thinking that you're most used to and is common that you hear talk amongst your folks that you go to church or go to synagogue or go to mosque or go to wherever, right? So you're going to interpret these things in a meaningful way to that sort of thought pattern that you have as a human being.
I see. So you don't see any predictions coming true. I hear you.
No, I don't see anything outside of what we could consider to be normal. Well, not so much normal, but the way things have always been going on planet Earth amongst human beings that have differences of opinion. I think that's always going to be an issue. I think there are always going to be people beating on other people because of those differences of opinion until we maybe evolve enough to let go of that bullshit. But I don't see that happening anytime soon. So all of these so-called predictions about nations going to war and yada, 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 they're all going to come true. And they have been for centuries.
Right.
There's nothing new.
What's so radically different about our time period now where we're, putting pride over logic as compared to, say, I don't know, 1480, a lot of people running around seemingly putting pride over logic in the Renaissance time. What about the scientific revolution, Like, what about that period of time? Why is this period of time more prideful and less logical than other times? By what criteria do you measure this?
I need more also to believe in a specific. I need more specificity for a prediction. You can say my friend Steve is going to be struck by a yellow cab at the corner of 15th and 30th, whatever, in 12:15 on Sunday.
Yeah,
and he's going to die. That's the kind of and if that happens, I'll go, holy shit, you made a prediction.
And I'll say this, John.
You can't. I have other things to say about this.
Real quick piece, which is I'm just gonna, if you want, you never have to take my homework, but if you want a little homework, there is this wonderful. He hasn't been doing it very long. He's not super well known. This Paulogia guy. He makes these cartoons. Never heard of him. No. He's Paul's amazing. But he has a really, really good video where he, I think, lays out his criteria very well for what a prediction is, for what this prophecy, like the bullet points that a statement has to adhere to for us to consider it being a prophecy and then fulfilled prophecy, and I really do. I would suggest going and finding that video. I'm sorry I don't have like the name of it off the top of my head, but I imagine if you go to Paulogia's channel and you just type in like prophecy, it'll
pop up. It should be like the first one or two.
Yeah. I think that's a really good place to start. Just having that.
He's Canadian too, John.
Yeah, he's Canadian too, right?
What's it called again?
Paulogia, and just go look up prophecies, and you'll find the criteria that he lays out. And I think it's really good. I think it's very robust. I think he does a good job of justifying why that criteria needs to be met. And then from there, what I would say is, now
check
go
out
back
the video I was on.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, of course, check out the one Neil was on, and watch other Paulogia stuff. Like, yeah, absolutely. But after you go listen to his criteria, go back to all of these predictions that you see and are mulling around in your head right now, and just go, hey, let me see if these actually match. Because I think you might be.
Fair data. I will look that up. Okay. Well, thanks for your advice.
Paulogia.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I still had something to say, but okay.
Yeah, if you want, I mean, you got a few more minutes, John? You still hanging?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Yeah, hang for a few. Neil's got something else to say real quick, and then we'll let you go. Okay. Don't leave
Okay.
just yet. We're having so much fun.
Not that I'm some kind of quantum physicist by any stretch, but I do know a little bit about the stuff because you sort of you dip into it as a chemist. You kind of dip into it a little bit. As far as what we know about the world of physics and quantum physics is interesting because you've got the side of the fence that says that all time happens at the same time, right? So in that sense, people could, if they knew how to tap into that, they could make predictions. However, there's another side that says all futures are unwritten because of the potential paths that they could take. So if that's the case, that's the one I actually lean to myself. Then you can't really predict if you could predict a possible future, but will that happen? Well, we don't know. Maybe somebody squished a bug on the way that they weren't in a specific timeline, and that altered everything. Right? It's like the grandfather paradox kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Well, no one can fully predict the future. All someone can do is make a plan. But what will actually happen, unveil, it will happen by itself. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, if people actively work to bring this about, right? Like if we put the prophecy on a gigantic stone temple and we tell everybody to do it for the next 50 years, it's not amazing that it happened, right? It's like, yeah, this makes sense. So the question then is that really fulfilled prophecy, right?
Like, no, it's pre-planned.
Right.
Someone's trying to make it happen.
Right.
You could also study how humans have gone throughout history and make predictions based on that.
Good. Well, anyway, I should let you. I think I should let you gentlemen go. Have a good evening.
Yeah, thanks so much.
You too, John. Thanks for the call.
That was good.
You too. Bye-bye.
That was another good call, Neil. I don't know. Maybe it's just something about us. Are we just that super? It's the long hair. It's the long. It brings out the good calls. That's what it is. No.
Brings out the inner hippie of people.
Yeah, that's what it is. They look at us and they're just like, look at these non-threatening freaking whatever. No. I do think that's really important that we have a robust understanding of what it means to be a prediction, of what it means to be prophecy, and very specific criteria as to how that is fulfilled. Because this is why it stuck with me when John's.
Hold on.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hold on. Prediction and prophecy are two different things.
Okay, so a prophecy is a specific type of prediction.
Right. It's one that they're telling you is absolutely going to happen.
Yeah, and it often is divine.
It's like usually it is.
Yeah.
Let's face it, it's usually that way. And just regular predictions are, well, this is based on what we see. This could potentially happen. Right?
Yes.
And I'm going to predict that somewhere in this range, things are going to end up this way.
Yes. And that's why predictions are super valuable. Predictions are really good because that's how we know whether or not we do have a good understanding of what's going on, right? When we see something occurring in the world around us and we say, oh my gosh, based on all of this information, I think this is the most likely outcome. And then it happens. That oftentimes is a good indication that our understanding is fairly correct, Like,
do you have any idea how many different disciplines in the world of science use prediction?
It's a fundamental
literally
aspect.
All of them.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
Because they have to. Like, I live in Vancouver. We live in an earthquake zone. And they can take all the models throughout the geological history of our planet to try and predict, in a rough area, because you can't be that specific with this. You say, the big one's going to hit there in the next 20 to 50 years. There's a good chance because that's the pattern that we see happened before, right? And we get little rumblings here all the time. Right. And funny story, we were sitting down at a friend of mine's place in the same building. I have a friend who lives here. And his girlfriend at the time got so scared because she felt the floor rumble. When I'm moving back to Ontario.
Yeah. Just gonna be honest, man. Haven't experienced that natural disaster and think I'd probably shit my pants. So don't know how.
Thanks, native atheist.
Yeah. Well, hang on. We're getting to that because we have a couple of super chats. No, go ahead, Wes. Put it up there. Native Atheist just sent us 10 American dollars saying here
That's
for
like a
Neil.
gazillion Canadian.
It is. Yeah, it is. And like an even higher number in Monopoly money. Or am I saying the same thing? You said Canadian, right? Never mind.
I've got
Doesn't
some
matter.
Star Wars Monopoly money over here if you want.
Thank you, Native Atheist. And $2 from Fern Lovebond. Thank you so much, Fern. We are always happy when you are here. Fortune telling funding. We appreciate it.
I got to tell you, I've within the last, I think I recently met Fern.
No
and
way.
they were a guest on the show, and they've been in our after parters.
Yeah.
Anywho, quite often, and Fern has become one of my favorite people in that time. So
yeah. And just so you know,
trying to buck for another $10. That's all.
Just so you know, Neil, that despite all of that wonderful, wonderful camaraderie, Fern is actually not here for you. But Native Atheist is. So, I mean, you got, that's still a victory. Nobody's here for me. So
I think so, yeah.
Anyway, we will go to another call because we have somebody else on the line. We have a theist in Michigan, Chloe, she, her, wants to talk about ways that science and religion or personal faith can harmonize and so forth. And that sounds like an interesting topic. So, hey, Chloe, you're chatting with Neil and SR. What is up?
Hi, Chloe.
Hi, Neil and SR.
I love the name Chloe, by the way. That's one of my favorite names.
Oh, thank you. And you know what? I was going to launch straight in, but this is probably cheating, but Neil, we were talking about it, and actually, Fern and I are really good friends. They're one of my favorite people too. And,
oh, no way.
That's cool.
That is really cool.
Exactly.
Yeah, I am glad you said that.
A lot. That's actually contributing to where I'm coming from. And Fern is also the reason why I've eventually become aware of these calls and these shows and started calling in.
Sounds like we just need to get Fern on the next Let's Talk. No pressure or anything, Fern, but it sounds like you are in great demand here. You are loved by us all. So, but anyway, Chloe, what you got for us today? Since you've been kind of slowly being dragged over to the dark side, it sounds like maybe. Just kidding. I'm sorry.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, we have cookies.
With that. So, I was listening to the Atheist Experience call-in show and wasn't able to get in there, but there was some stuff that got going in my head that I wanted to share about, and some of what got going, I had a bunch of epiphanies. I'm not going to try and turn them all in here, but so Fern has been teaching me a lot about science, besides what I knew in my education, and not just about science, but how it gets misrepresented. I'm still a literal 6-day creationist. That's how I was raised. But also, I'm a doctor's kid who's not anti-pharma, who's not anti-medicine, who's not anti-vaccine. There's how do I say this? The other day, somebody asked Fern if about asking me a question, and somebody just prepared that she's not going to respond like most fundamentalists will necessarily, something like that. And so I have certain religious beliefs that apparently are intellectually shocking and kind of revolting, and I understand now more why. And then also, though, I've always been friendly to science, interested, found it curious, fascinating, and logical. And I love truth, and I think that because of the atheists that I've met, where there's this love of learning and of ongoing learning, and of rigorously scouring things to figure out what's real and what's not. That's always been something in me, but that has never been something that was out of harmony with my faith experience until I started having betrayal trauma with my church. And so we're not going to talk about my personal story at all right now, just to say that I'm a mixed bag. But what remains the same is curious. And so the thing about science and religion is harmonizing, personal faith harmonizing, whereas
Well, you're cutting out just a little bit for us, Chloe, and it sounded like you were about to get right to the meat of it. So I want to make sure everybody hears you. Just start over again real quick for us from right about there.
Okay, I will try. Probably won't be able
Science
to
and
about that fast, but science and religion not being enemies and actually harmonizing, not just in my past experience, but still going forward, even with everything else that has fallen away. So, one thing that I can only, I guess I'll stick to, like there was like an evolution creation thing, and then there was like, you guys pick. Okay, so there was like an evolution creation thing that was really short, and then there was stuff that had to do with like gender and sexuality.
Mm-hmm. Sure, I could see how both of
those, because I get decision paralysis.
Yeah, do the evolution and creation. I could see how both of those would potentially have this butting of heads, science and religion. But yeah, let's do, since you said you are a literal 6 day creationist. You do think the Earth was made in the universe in 6 days, and Genesis is literal? Is that what you?
Yeah.
Okay,
yes,
cool. Then yeah, let's take that route.
I have a question.
I mean, science is vast and fascinating, and the thing is that like it's been the work and progression of like hundreds and thousands of years of people applying their brains. And when you, logically speaking, if you believe in a supernatural being, you believe in a supernatural God, that means that like the God is going to be able to do things we can't, and also it's going to have facets that we won't be able to readily or quickly understand. I think that's just logical. If there's a supernatural and we're natural, if it's infinite and finite, then there's going to be like some overlaps and some stuff that we can't get to. So I first of all, like, I think that a literal 6 day creation could happen from a supernatural God because the supernatural God would have the power to do something that drastic, because that just makes logical sense to me. Like how, like we think like, well, how could that be? Like this took so much work and this was so complex. Like how in 6 days? It's so huge, and I'm like, well, if you believe in a God who's like a God and infinite and supernatural, then, a God is the only kind of being who could probably do something that big. And do something.
Hang on just a second. Hang on just a second right there, Chloe. Hang on just a second, because I think that's already some really, really good stuff. And I really appreciate you calling in and speaking with us today. I think this is a really cool topic, and I think you have a great mindset about it. But hang on just a second, because Neil, I think, has a question.
I do. I mean, I was once sort of in your train of thought back when I still held whatever minute modicum of belief I had. So I was never really a full-on believer, we'll say. Okay. And there are reasons why, but we won't get into that. One of the questions I had for the 6 day creation is if this all-knowing being, what we would consider to be a supernatural being, who's all-knowing and all-powerful, what he'd have to be in order to create an entire universe. How come he got shit backwards? How come let there be light? He got stuff mixed up. Like he's, in the beginning, let there be light, but there were no stars yet. In order for there to be light, there has to be photons, and stars produce photons. So how could that have happened? And how could he put plants before sunlight? That wouldn't work either. So how does that sort of, how do you suss that out and still think that it's some sort of an all-knowing entity that did all this? Like, those are just two examples.
So, I'll be able to answer this. And what I'm going to say first is I'm not enough of a scientist to be able to get super eloquent, but I can at least see the logic of what you're saying is referring to that, and a Bible verse that is, kind of an anchor for me in terms of his identity. Actually, two of them. That's how I'm going to answer this. So, there's in 1 John 1:5, it says that God is light. In him is no darkness at all. And I don't think that is just a symbol. I think that is also that is, God is love and God is light. And so there's also, that whole thing of like the origin of light. So, I mean, like, there's photons, but I think that if God is the original being, just is light, then when he creates other entities that we can identify as being different entities of light, a star, a moon, actually the moon reflects light, sorry, then there's the sun, that like, then just like taking different parts of its essence and making smaller things that can do things with that. So in other words, I think that the original substance is still him. And also in Revelation, it talks about how there's not going to need to be any more sun and moon because his presence is there. So I know that that's not scientific, but that's the logic I'm coming from. that probably won't sound scientific to you, but that's
Okay,
like
I
logic.
understand that.
Yeah, I think I'm
I
following.
understand that.
One question that comes to my mind, Chloe, is you started with this idea that like, hey, I believe in this being. I believe in this deity that has all these really, incredible powers, and has these particular attributes that we as humans are pretty much fundamentally limited from ever fully comprehending. Do you think, first off, that's a fair assessment? Like my kind of shouting back to you of what you said about God. Do you think what I just said there is a fair assessment of how you feel about it, how you view it?
Yeah.
Okay, so with
Yeah, I
that,
actually didn't have the slightest push about it.
yeah, so with that starting point, I guess what comes to my mind is this possibility that God actually created the day, actually created all of the world in 6 minutes, but then spoke to an individual and made it sound like it was 6 days. And the communication that God, this all-powerful being, gave to this individual to then write down, that deity purposefully wanted to make it sound like it was 6 days, even though it was in 6 minutes. And I guess what I'm wondering is, how do you rule that out?
Why did he leave it to
Try and make
humans
that
to write
simpler
the
one
book
more
in the
time for me.
beginning?
Sure,
Like-
good question, but
So like if I'm understanding you correctly,
Mhm.
you're saying that from the standpoint of science, that the world was created in 6 minutes, and then like an all-powerful, unknowing being, like why was it that the Bible says it was created in 6 days?
no, let me try
feel like
again. Let me
Yeah.
try again, Chloe. So
Okay.
it sounded like what you said to me was, and cut me off if I'm wrong on this. It sounded like what you said to me was, hey, SR Neil, there is, I believe that there is this particular type of being with all of these attributes and powers and so forth. And so like, it seems to follow that that being could actually create all of the universe in 6 days. And I'm like, well, yeah, if you start from that, absolutely, I see how that follows. The only thing I don't know how we rule out is that we're the ones that are getting it wrong. How do we rule out the fact that this being, which has all these powers, does exist, right? I'm granting all of that. How do we rule out that this being didn't actually do it in a completely different way and just like
Broken telephone.
and a broken telephone, right? Like how do we do that? How do we determine specifically this 6-day thing as opposed to all of these other potential options? Because it seems like that being that you started out with could equally do all of those other things. What's the difference? Why the 6 days as opposed to the 6 minutes?
So like there was an earlier part of your question that seems more clear than you. Go back to the middle. Like how can we rule out? What was that question about? Like how can we rule out what? That part was clear to me, and I was ready to answer, and then I got confused.
Yeah. So it seems to me like the logical chain you're making is there is this being with all of these attributes that could create the universe in 6 days, and therefore it seems to make sense that happened, that that's possible. And what I'm saying is, doesn't it also work in the same construction to say there's this being that has the ability to create the earth and the universe in 6 days and has the ability to communicate that to us, but instead of actually doing it in 6 days, did it in 6 minutes and just communicated it to us in a way that made it seem like 6
interpreted
days.
it wrong.
Right. How do we know that we're not just getting it wrong because the deity could do anything?
I mean, I don't know that we can, based on my best grasp of what you're saying,
Mhm.
I don't know that we can do the ruling out that you're asking for.
Yeah. And yeah, I'm right there with you, Chloe. I am 100 freaking percent on that exact same page. And for me, that's one of the biggest problems that I have when it comes to a lot of these religious starting points that take us to conclusions. Because when you said that thing, Chloe, I was like, holy shit, she is spot on. Like, yeah, if we start with the understanding that there is this divine presence, there is this entity that absolutely has the ability to do all this super cool stuff, and we're incapable of ever fully comprehending what that being is like and what that being wants. And right, exactly. Like, yeah, totally. Of course this could happen. And we could just totally be confused about all the stuff when it comes to fossils and radiometric dating and all. Absolutely. But if we start with that conclusion, it seems like we also have all of these other super plausible things that we really don't have the ability to distinguish between. Go ahead, Neil.
Another thing.
I think that's where and like that brings up another way that I think that religion and science actually need each other in our search to understand and navigate reality, because there are things that we can know, and then where we don't know, you have to say the cliche thing of like that's where faith kicks in. However, I will say that like a lot of people do the thing of like, well, that's where faith kicks in, and they do that as an excuse to stop being curious and to stop researching, and also to try and push certainty to just make the conversation stop.
You know what, Chloe? There are even things that we don't know. We don't know.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's the honest thing to do to say that.
Yeah.
No, I agree.
Yeah. Yeah. And
right, I agree.
And the thing is that like, and so like if Christians, you know, people who say that they believe in an infinite God and they want to follow that through, then if we're finite and he's infinite, then everything to do with reality is something that we're never going to be done continuing to learn about, both on this side of heaven and the next.
Yeah,
because that's the thing about infinite, is that it just doesn't stop, and so the learning never stops.
Of course, but let's just hope that our future ancestors, if you want to call them that, are going to learn some of these things. We learn stuff all the time.
Well, yeah.
Like I constantly, as a chemist, I get to flip through all kinds of papers and stuff like
You're
that.
A chemist?
And some of the stuff, yeah, I'm a chemist for an environmental company, but it's a whole other thing. But I do get to see papers, right? So I get to see all these cool things that they're coming up with, including in the realm of medicine, in the realm of the environment, in the realm of oil and gas, whatever, that kind of thing. I get to see all this cool stuff. And there's something almost every day, you're guaranteed that they've discovered at least 10 new things, all using what we call the scientific method. Now, that's not one method, by the way. The scientific method is branches of methods. When I do testing at work, I use multiple methods to do that.
Right.
Okay, so, but
yeah.
But the thing that I have an issue with, you're born into and raised as some derivation of Christianity, or some denomination of Christianity, I'm assuming. Okay, and I was born. Here's the funny thing: I was actually born to Christians, but I was given up for adoption and raised as a Jew. So, so if Christianity is the right route, then why did God allow for me to be raised by Jews?
God messed up on that plan.
But that's not really where I'm going. But that's one of the points I like to bring up.
Well, and I'll just interject for just a hot second that, like, that is, I think that where you just came from to say, like, well, like, on that, I want to say that, like, I think that is a reflection of how I think that the mass majority of Christendom worldwide has pushed a very constricting view of God's interests and his capabilities. Like, oh, you're not a strict Christian? Well, then you don't matter because you're a Christian. Only the Christians matter. But no, human beings matter.
You sound a little heretical, Chloe. I'm just saying, you're sounding a lot more like one of us blasphemers, non-religious folk. I'm teasing.
What if millions of people are wrong?
Here's the thing.
Hold on, but what if millions of people are actually wrong, and the people that heard the story about Mpofu or Mbumba or whatever his name is, the deity that threw up the universe into existence because he had a sore stomach? How do we know that's not the truth?
Well, I think that every origin story to do with a supernatural deity that is
lots of
supposed to explain the beginning of things like thousands and thousands of years ago. I don't think that any of us can know that for fact because we right now weren't there. And so there has to be a degree of faith.
See, the you weren't there argument doesn't work for me because as a scientist or a form of a scientist, I call myself a hack scientist. We don't need to be there because the things that we're investigating were there, and they have signs, and they are not signs. They have details that demonstrate what was going on at the time. Like for example, ice core samples can tell you what the climate was at the time. Fossils can tell you what was going on, not only with the animal, but the world around them at the time, especially if they find like a nest of eggs or something like that, which is cool when they do that. But anyways, we have methods of knowing what was going on at that time. We didn't have to be there.
So does it sound like willful, obnoxious, or does it sound rational in the way that I mean it to be sterile and rational, but I know it might come off as like, just willfully refusing to think about that. But like, wouldn't it be reasonable to say that like, we have ways of knowing quite a bit about back then, but when you think about it, it's like, it's everything back then, whether it's cultural or in the earth. Like, if it's just not the same now as it was then, and those times are over, wouldn't it be actually that like we have methods of knowing a lot of everything about that then?
Methods of knowing what? You cut out a little bit. I just want to make sure I follow you fully.
Methods of knowing a lot about then, but not the entirety of back then.
Well, so
of course.
So yeah, so I think
history is often written by the victors as well.
Yeah. But if we're looking at an effect of let's not look at it from a like sociological or historical anthropological lens, right? Because I think all three of us obviously see the human bias that can come in. Like one guy writes, "Man, that sculpture was awesome," and the next guy writes, "That was the shittiest sculpture," and then only the second tablet survives. Like we get that, right? But what Neil brought up a second ago was like these ice core samples, right? And I want to bring up something that really blew my fucking mind. Okay. The amount of limestone that exists in the world currently. Okay. We have a decent understanding, not down obviously to every, cubic centimeter or whatever, but we do have a pretty decent understanding of where limestone is and how much of it is there and
how it was produced,
how it was produced and stuff. For instance, me being in Tennessee, I can tell you almost all of the soil around me underneath a very small layer of that dirt is clay, but underneath that clay is a shit ton of limestone because my area of the world was probably submerged underwater for like hundreds of millions of years. All of that being said, we know, again, a rough estimate, not down to the second, but we're pretty confident about how long it takes for limestone to be produced. With the amount of limestone that currently exists on the world, it would have to be in the hundreds of thousands to millions of year range. It just has to be, right? Because there's no other way that the limestone could be formed unless, I'm going to go back to what you said originally, Chloe, unless we accept from the beginning that there is this all-powerful entity that can just do whatever it wants whenever it wants. But then I go back to this question of, but then I go back to the question of how do we know that God, just made all the limestone in this way purposefully? How do we know that it wasn't another God? How do we know that it didn't happen another way? Like, do you see it?
Of limestone.
Yeah, right. I'm sure there's one out there in ancient times or something. Do you see though what kind of at least one of my pushbacks is about like, we don't have it down perfectly, but we do have enough of an understanding to at least rule out some things.
Yeah. Well, and then also like, again, like I'm not saying this for the purpose of being contrary. I have a literal brain and this just popped up in my head, especially from how I've been learning about what evolution actually is. And it's about like things in nature changing and diversifying and adapting. Like things change. Like, people don't live as long, and people, I think are like different heights over time. There's all sorts of things that have changed, like whether it's humans or whether it's the planet or whether it's animals and species. And so, like, what about the properties of limestone? What about, like,
and by the way, it's all continuing to change.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like,
But-
how do we know if the rules now are the same as they were then? 'Cause
That's a really interesting question. And I think there's something there that we do need to talk about, which is, for instance, and I'm gonna kick this over to Neil, because I know he has again, he calls himself affectionately a hack scientist. I'm a wannabe hack scientist, okay? So he's gonna explain a bit more. But for instance, when a lot of the things you brought up, it was like, yeah, I'm on the same page. We see the change, right here in front of us, whether it's birds, whether it's plants, whether it's ideas or human culture, architecture changes over time. We know
Certainly
people
does.
build things differently, right? But here's something really interesting. What about atoms? What about the periodic table of elements? What about, for instance, the strong or weak nuclear force? Do we have any understanding about whether or not they change or have changed or can change? Because that might help us out in this scenario. Neil, what are your thoughts on this? What are your thoughts on this matter?
The elements themselves, and some of them we made, by the way. Some of them are human made, just so you know. I was trying to find my table of elements.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking if I had one close by.
I do. I have this little glass encased one that I thought was pretty cool. I also have my Learn the Elements flashcards that I teach kids with, stuff like about that. The elements themselves, they're not going to change. They are what they are. It's the combination of elements that leads into the chemistry of it all, and that can change over time. And sure, human beings have been mixing up elements since the dawn of us knowing about elements and how to use them. And we've come up with some really bad shit, and we've come up with some pretty cool shit, to put it loosely. Now, I'm not an evolutionary biologist, but I do know how some of the things that are within evolution that cause change and stuff like the change in the allele frequencies and stuff like that. And evolution doesn't always work out to something positive. Species, due to an evolutionary curve, have gone extinct. This is not always beneficial. It's like a mistrigger happens, and something happens, and they evolve a little bit where, no shit, that's not it. Now this branch of the species dies out. But I think the most modern example I can think of showing how speciation works, which in my mind is the ultimate telltale sign of evolution, is when two species can no longer interbreed and they evolve from the same parent species.
That again? Wait, that sounded like a thesis statement to my brain. Say that again. What is like the most telling proof of evolution, or how you said it? Just say it to me again. For
me, anyways, I think the biggest way to notice how evolution works really good that we have an example of today is something. It's a type of evolution called speciation, is where two different species are now so different they can no longer interbreed. And there's a species of mosquito in the UK underground, in the tube, that left the other species above the ground because all the humans were going into the tube during World War II, and some of the mosquitoes followed them underground, and because that was a food source for them, and they started breeding like crazy down there. Now, generations later of that species of mosquito that has been stuck in the underground because for some reason they're not smart enough to find their way out. So generations of these mosquitoes have happened. Literally, I think something like since the 40s, there have been like 80 something different generations. But now they no longer can procreate with their original species they spawned off of.
That's cool.
that is a modern day example of evolution and its works.
That makes me happy. I'm glad you told that story. I just have the biggest smile on my face. I think stuff like that is so interesting and cool. Like,
yeah, you can Google it. It's there. I'll tell you.
That's in the lifetime of humans, actively looking at this
I wasn't
stuff.
born until the 60s.
Well, no, I'm not saying us humans, Neil,
I
chill. I'm saying
specific humans.
It's right. It's in the time where, we as people are actively looking at this stuff and cataloging this stuff and have, you know, good methods of saying like, oh yeah, this is reliable, you know. And so again, just to, you know, go back to the first part you were saying there, Neil, and then we'll kick it back over to you, Chloe. But there are some things absolutely we know have this type of change in a manner where
we see it in the bacterial world all the time.
Right.
Speciation.
Right. And it's like we see this change to such a degree, and you know, it's so common amongst all these disparate seeming categories, and we're like, well, gosh, if it's happening everywhere, why isn't it also happening with helium? You know, why doesn't it also happen with you know, radon or lead, and it's because there is something a little bit different when it comes to those categories, when it comes to the physical, the tiny little bits of matter that make up everything. It really does seem, based on the current evidence. Now, we could find something out tomorrow that shatters everything, believe me. But based on the current evidence, it does really seem to indicate that, you know, 20,000 years ago, whatever our songs and art looked like, mesons and bosons and hydrogen, they were all the same. They were all the same. And because they were the same back then, we can look at some stuff today and go, well, gosh, like, look at all of this limestone. Limestone is made up of these really, really particular elements that only create this structure when certain things are in place. And one of those certain things is a shit ton of time. And so if we have this much limestone, we have to have at least this much time. You know, we just work backwards with the equation. But again, I know we shouted a bunch at you there, Chloe. But please give us your thoughts.
I enjoyed it. No, but like, and also
that's good.
This was backwards, like with that equation. But the equation, you know, is based on like what we know for sure now, or that we think we know for sure now. And so like we've definitely, like, you know, in a mathematical sense, working back with that equation, if we're right that all the vectors are unchanging, then that would make it correct. And then also, like, just according to like this fundamental principle in evolution that like things change over time, but like good grief, like I think one of the most massive constants in every aspect of human history is change.
Sure.
And so like if we're doing the problem right and find that formula, then yes. But also, you know, I would argue,
reason?
I think it's kind of impossible.
What reason do you have to push back on that argument? Because it sounded like you just said, hey, you know what? The way you laid that out, SR, yeah, it seems like if we do have some of these other things pretty solid, you could rework that equation and flip the variables around and figure out how much time. What reason do you currently have to say, hey, you know what? Maybe we just don't know these other things as well?
They could get comment.
Well,
breathe right.
That's exactly what I said. But the reason why I said it is because, like, I think that it's just honest to keep these implications and these plausible ideas on the table without, and to say them in a way that puts them there without trying to actually bash and destroy the validity of like what you just said. You know, because with the implication that like evolution is all about all kinds of change, then my brain just naturally applies that to all sorts of things. And I'm like, well, this could change, that could change. So like, there's what we think that we know now, what we do know. And then what about the stuff that we can't verify that we, you know, that might have been different before? And so it's just about like, I think it's like an intellectually honest thing to just like put all these different possibilities on the table. Because if you want me to, I will gladly turn around and you bring up other sorts of Christendom things, and I'll gladly get Christian stuff back too. And I'll, you know, critique there too. Like it's like, let's put it all on the table. Like, let's not close off all sorts of possibilities. And I think that when people have a really intense or personal investment in one particular thing, then putting other possibilities on the table can make people react really, and I don't understand the you guys, but like it's this thing where like people can react really defensively. Like, why can't you just accept this? And why do you have to be contrary? Like, you know, it's like if we're all going over the truth, and if we don't have, okay, yeah.
I I want to tie something because I agree with you. I think what you just said is very much right. But I want to tie something you said earlier into that, whereas you said that we know, right? So, which is like making a knowledge claim. And the thing is when you say I know something, and people say, "Oh, do you?" Okay, well then show me.
Mhm.
That's the thing. Knowledge is always demonstrable. Not everything that we believe is necessarily or even possibly demonstrable. So when we claim to know
I think
something,
I get what you're saying, but then, like, how would you then apply that to, like, when you have experiential knowledge of a human being in a way that is intimate, then how would you say all knowledge is demonstrable? Like, how would you really demonstrate that knowledge? Except, like, we could, like, say all the things that we know, and then I think
okay,
the only real way to know would demonstrate that we really do experientially intimately know somebody would be to, like, show it over time. Like,
sure, and I get that experience.
And I think what maybe you were saying is this knowledge is that it's like the data, the science, the substances, like the stuff that's more physically holdable and measurable and visible.
Right, and our experiences aren't that. That's the problem. When we have personal experiences, we can say to ourselves, listen, I know this happened to me, and you'd be right in saying that, but you can't demonstrate that that actually happened to other people, right? So experiences we don't actually use as a form of evidence, we'll say, or a form of demonstrating
Fern has
something.
definitely made that very, very clear to me. I mean,
Right. So we can't use that sort of thing as
why? Because experiences aren't trash, but they are subjective, and you can't just transplant your experiential knowledge to another person. Like, I wish we could do the Matrix sometimes,
Right.
but we can't.
What about, I mean, you want to talk about experiences, Chloe. There is a case of a person that had their the callosum or whatever, what do they call that? The
corpus callosum.
Corpus callosum severed to separate both the
Yeah.
right and left brain. And the same person, this is one body with, like, now what seemed to be two different brains. And one part of that person's personality was a religious person, and the other part of that person's personality was non-religious. And they both had different experiences. And this is one of the reasons, or one of the cases that sort of led to the whole, well, we can't rely on personal experience. And that's also why they don't, in a lot of cases, they don't allow people to testify in court, because we don't know that what they particularly saw wasn't on a day when they had some sort of a mental issue going on, right? Some sort of neurotopic or neuropathic thing going on, right? So, and that person, I think, is a great example of not really being able to. And it's hard to do, but it took me a long time to understand that I can't rely on my experiences as being something that I can use as evidence to make a point.
Yeah, and I think you said something. You said something a second ago, Chloe, that I really liked, but I want to make sure that we don't go off the edge here, right? So I loved the idea. Right now. I loved the idea when you said, "Hey, we should, we should honestly come to the table with all of these different, hypotheses and potentials and really, really give them a fair shot." Don't just close off, this idea that the earth could literally be made in 6 days. Don't just walk through the door and say that's trash and move on. Like, really give it a good go. I think that is abso-freaking-lutely the correct answer. Here's what I wonder, though. I wonder why the individuals that have been doing that for decades now, on both sides, the believing side and the non-believing side, I wonder why they haven't made any progress. I wonder why they haven't been able to win over colleagues. I wonder why institutions like Creation Research Institute and Answers in Genesis and all of these other, I wonder why they have explicitly stated that they will no longer be publishing their materials in reputable scientific journals. And it almost seems to me like it's because we have hashed this out a little bit. The individuals who do have the knowledge, who do have the ability to say, I can read this and understand it and explain it to others, it seems like they have honestly come to the table and looked at some of this stuff. And they have some decent pushbacks. Again, what I brought up earlier about the limestone was actually just a really, really small part of this cool thing called the heat problem. And I'm known to give
so
people
sorry.
home.
I'm
Yeah.
actually, I'm so sorry. I'm going to interrupt you because
Please.
it seems like you were asking, I go on tangents here, but you seem like you were asking the question and then started to do something else. You were asking like, if like, you know, like why is it that like typically like the literal six-day creation Christian scientists like why
Yeah,
they
if you
withdraw
wanna-
and why they don't mix, or
Yeah,
why
if you want to
like,
give a response to
you know,
that,
or why
yeah,
they haven't been
please.
able to win over more. Well, am I correct in hearing that like that you said that there are, you know, creation scientist type people who decided that they were going to be the ones to walk away?
Yes, 100%.
That they were going to be the ones to stop like publishing in like,
Yes, that's the
mainstream
reason that
journals
Answers
or
in
whatever?
Genesis and Creation Research Institute do not publish their information. That's the reason they created their own journals. They explicitly have said multiple times that they aren't going to continue working with secular scientists, because every single time they have ever put up papers using their methodology and reaching the conclusions that they have reached, they have resoundingly been rejected by the individuals, and not rejected in a we didn't read it and just kicked it out the door because of the title. People who spent years researching their data, going through the exact methodologies and discovering all of the flaws and pointing them out and saying, due to all of these problems, we cannot co-sign on this information. And that's why those believers walked away.
Okay, so like basically lots and lots of research, really thorough time given, and then they walked away. So why have they not been able, like, you know, if I believe that literal six-day creation is correct, and then there are these other people who did, then why haven't they won more, and then they're the ones who walked away?
Yeah, why hasn't, if truly you say, hey, let's bring all the different possibilities. Let's bring all the different possibilities to the table. We have on one side this idea that, like, I don't know, maybe the universe is a really fucking long time old and, you know, maybe didn't need divine intervention. And on the other side, we have this idea of like, hey, maybe the universe is like really not that old and it did need divine intervention. We bring those hypotheses and all the others to the same table, and we all start talking about it. And then after years of doing that, the first side seems to be the only side still making progress, while the second side seemed to take all their toys and go home and aren't making any progress with their method.
They put them in their own journals. They create their own journals.
So I want to. So I think I've got a clear understanding of what you're saying, and so I'm going to respond to the best of my knowledge and logic. First of all, I mean, if these are, and if there's any Christians who listen to this now or later, I'm not trying to be judgmental. This is just going to be literal on the spot. So, I mean, in other words, like, if they believe that it's true, why hasn't the truth persuaded more people and then they also left, right?
Well, if it is true, if it is
Like,
actually true, like if it is actually true and we do the thing that you suggest, which I also agree with, and it seems like Neil does too, if it is true, why hasn't that one been the one that's coming up right? And why has it been this other one? And that, you know, it's kind of a layman's way of saying
so the best I can say, since I don't know the people, I don't know the stories, and I don't know the data on both sides. Just based on what you're saying, though, is that, like, I mean, the principles come to mind of how, like, sometimes, you know, different groups, there's different sides, both who have a lot of bit of truth that can be combined. But then sometimes, you know, people get tired of persevering and also haven't yet found whatever the complex resolution is, because, I mean, good grief, right? Research, medicine, science is full of how, like, we finally succeeded, but it was a really complex resolution, but we finally fucking figured it out, you know? And so, like, what I'm hearing is that, like, the Christian scientists who are, like, literal six-day creationists, they tried and tried, got rejected and rejected, and eventually they quit. Is that correct?
No.
Well, they quit trying to publish it into regular science journals.
They quit coming to the table. Right.
Yeah.
They quit coming to the
Well,
table and bringing their ideas and instead went to their own table and started talking about those ideas. So why?
Like mainstream scientific journals didn't kick them out; they left. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because they were told that what they were bringing to the table didn't work with what they know
Right.
of the scientific community.
Right, because they came to the
No,
table
I
and
mean,
said, this holds up to your standard, and the journals said, this does not hold up to our standards. And because it didn't hold up to their standards, the creation research, those 6-day people, they left. They came to the table like you suggested and said, here's our stuff, it meets your standards. And the non-creationist side says, no, it doesn't. And so then the creationist side left and started publishing their own stuff in their own journals.
Mm-hmm.
So the non-creationists didn't say you can't even try anymore. It was
No, of course not.
Rejection.
No, the journal Science and the journal Nature. No. Yeah. Anybody can submit a paper.
Okay, I think I've got all the points clear. I think I want to start answering.
Okay.
So, I mean, look, if they were not told you just can't anymore and you can't keep trying and you can't publish, and they could have kept publishing only to keep being rejected until maybe there could have been some success later, they gave up. And I think that that's sad because, like, when you do believe that you have the truth and there are other people, and if you have interactions with other people who may be fundamentally different from you, but you sense that both of you are sincere lovers of truth, and then somebody just decides to give up and go home and just go somewhere else where it can quite possibly be an echo chamber. I mean, I don't think that necessarily means that literal 6-day creation science is yet wrong or has no hope. I think that people who believe in it and who, are researching, I think that they got tired and they decided to go somewhere else where there wouldn't be as much of a struggle and where they wouldn't have to
instead of focusing on the individual's motives, what I really want you to focus on is the progress. What I really want an answer to is not so much about the people's feelings, but focus on which side, which group there is actually making predictions that we have good reason to accept as true. And what I'm saying is the non-creationism side has those things, but the creationism side doesn't. And if the creationism side is true, why doesn't it have those things similar to the non-creationism side? Don't worry so much about the people being dejected or brokenhearted. I agree that shit happens all the time, and it doesn't have anything to do with. Hang on just a second, Chloe. I swear I'll let you talk. I mean, we've been doing this for 45 minutes. Just take Chloe. I don't want to mute you, but just hang on a second. Okay, almost done. I swear. The question and the focus that I was going for is not so much the why are they feeling bad and not playing anymore. The question really is okay. Okay, so then answer that question. Why are the creationist side not making progress with their predictions and the non-creationism side is?
I peppered you with clarifying questions at first, because I needed to understand the question before I could answer. And my answer does have 2 parts. And I'm literal brained, I'm autistic. And so I had to say that part first.
Okay.
And now, having said that, which wasn't like, they dejected and brokenhearted. It's more like, first of all, there's like just a giving up. And here's the thing. Like, if it is true, and there's still all this other reality, and it's true, there's all so much more to learn. And if they haven't yet succeeded, I mean, maybe there's still more research that they need to do, and more of a breakthrough that they should have persevered to have and continue sharing that finally would have. And we can't know that right now.
Do you grant that same charity in other capacities, though? Do you think that's the reason why? Do you think that's the reason why the flying machines that Leonardo da Vinci sketched out aren't working? Is just because, fuck Bernoulli, we just actually need to do a little bit more work on Leonardo da Vinci's ancient flying machine? Or is it maybe because Leonardo's machine just doesn't work and modern airplanes do? Like, do you grant that level of charity to other categories, or is it just this one when it butts up against your religious beliefs?
No, I know that's I think that's an important principle everywhere.
So do you believe Bigfoot exists?
Leonardo da Vinci, Vinci's, like, his airplane attempt, if I'm saying that correctly, I already forgot the term you used, but I can picture it. Like that, oh, it just didn't work. But the thing is that, like, I feel like that's not even a good analogy, because that's such a simple, like, it's an object you could hold in your hands and look at. Whereas we're talking about, like, a massive scientific, multifaceted endeavor about something that even the regular mainstream science, like, acknowledges an intellectual honesty that, like, we know what we know, and this is what we think we know.
Have you ever held a radioactive rock in your hand, Chloe? Have you ever held a rock that is currently emitting radiation in your hand?
I have.
I have. So what I'm talking about.
Problem is, many rocks have radiation.
They do. A lot do. But that's one of the things that I'm talking about, is something truly as tangible as that flying machine. And I don't think a lot of these specific things that we've been talking about are as abstract as you want to make them. I think when it comes to something like the formation of, for instance, lead, or the ability to create a machine that can fly or not, I think all of those things are very much in the same ballpark as evolution. And Neil, for instance, brought up a really cool example that happens tangibly in front of us. Now, sure, I get what you're saying. Like, hey, man, nobody was around 14.8 billion years ago to, like, see the Big Bang. Totally. But the reason that most individuals, scientifically
there's
minded,
evidence left behind.
That's what I was going to get to. The radiation. There is radiation that is left behind that, based on what we know about, again, fills in the rest of that equation, and we can flip it around and figure out how much time. If all of this radiation exists currently around us, just like the limestone, it had to have taken this long to get there. But honestly, Chloe, we've been going at this almost for an hour, which I think is phenomenal, because you are absolutely you are an absolutely wonderful caller. I hope that you hang out with us more. I hope you come back. We are gonna let you go and try to wrap up. But give us a last closing thought. But yeah, seriously, great conversation, Chloe. I'm so glad you came to hang out with us.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. And you wanted a last closing thought from me?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, you asked me the question, like, would you be this charitable elsewhere? Where is a place that you don't think where you suspect or think that I wouldn't be that same charitability, whether it's science or something that relates to, the human experience, human rights? Like, where else? As a
the existence of Bigfoot.
That I wouldn't be as charitable. And I guess that's like a question and not a thought, but, like, you said that, so I'm curious.
Yeah, the existence of Bigfoot, or dragons, or lizard people, or the Earth being flat, or the moon not existing, or the moon being made of green cheese, any of those ones. I think you do not lend that same level of charity. I think you don't believe that Bigfoot exists, and I think you don't believe that the moon is made of green cheese. I could be wrong, but I think I think probably you come down on a similar side as me there. But seriously, Chloe, this has been one of the greatest.
I am Bigfoot.
Yeah. Neil actually is Bigfoot. It's just blurry photos of him.
So here, you asked me for a closing thought, and then I asked the question. So here's a closing thought.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I didn't get on the show to say this, but here's something that's distinct. We mentioned Fern earlier, and we've mentioned Fern throughout. And this will seem like a usury, selfish plug, but it's not. It just popped into my head. Fern and I have a baby channel that we're babies at, and Fern's probably going to be maybe like half happy, half upset that I said this, because we haven't really gotten regular with content. And, like, it's just raw conversation. And it's on YouTube. And we had Nikki from Visa Cole on recently, because she's the reason we met.
Oh, yeah, and, Nikki's great.
Yeah, so. Yeah, so that exists, and it's the thing that we've kind of, like, that we're working on. So there's that.
That's awesome. Yes, I will say that Fern is frantically typing in the chat. No, Chloe, stop it. Please, God, please, God. No, it wasn't that bad. But no, seriously, I think that is super duper awesome. that y'all are close and y'all chat and stuff. And Fern is always such a wonderful person that is around in so many incredible spaces.
Fern's good people.
And yeah, good people, and wonderful person to be chatting with. And seriously, Chloe, thank you so much again. You were wonderful fun, and maybe one day you'll finally bring us back to the light, or maybe we'll drag you down to hell with us. But either way,
Yeah, maybe you'll be on my show one day.
That's right.
Telling
Either
us
way,
how
we'll
you
have a
found your
good
victory.
time.
Or maybe we'll all like find a new way to make progress together.
You know what? I'm okay with that one too. I'm a big fan of that one too, Chloe. I like the idea of making a better world for us all. So anybody else who agrees with that, you are on my fucking team. So thank you so much, Chloe. We hope to chat with you in the future. And that was a really, really good call, man. We only had good calls today. Seriously.
I think so. I think, and they were actually fun to talk about some of the stuff. It's not often where I get to bring up that mosquito example.
I loved that. Seriously. So. I know go back if you just joined now, or you skipped around in the video and you didn't get to see my totally goofy smile that came on my face the moment you started talking about this. I was just like, holy crap, I love this story. I love shit like that. It's just it's fascinating. It's fascinating to me. But we do, we come here and we gather and we have our funs, and we laugh our laughs, and we arguments our arguments, or whatever. Fuck it. You know what I'm saying. But eventually we all have to go back to our daily lives and do the normal human things. Yes. But I want to put everyone at ease. There was a lot of people asking. People have been stopping me on the streets, and they have been demanding an answer, Neil. So I would love to know, will you be more regularly here taking calls? Is that something that's going to happen in the future? The fans demand to know.
Well, I do love doing this. So I'll come on whenever you need me. I mean, good. I'm already scheduled, I think, again for a couple weeks from now.
Yeah, you are.
Once every couple of weeks works for me.
Good.
So,
good.
I'm down for that. You guys are pretty much the only call-in show that'll actually have me on a regular basis. The other ones kind of go, Canadian Neil guy, forget that guy. Sucks.
We've already got too many people with long hair on all of them. I'm sorry.
I know what it is, right?
Teasing.
Like, I haven't done any of the other ones for so long.
I know.
Mind you, I kind of told them I was stepping away from it for a bit too. So,
well, tell them that you're back, man. Tell them that you're ready to do it again.
I do a lot of stuff online. Like I do.
Busy. I know.
And I think I like leaving it with my show twice a week now, because we've gone from 3 to twice, because I'm getting old and I just don't have the energy anymore.
Right.
And I love doing this show and coming on and doing the call-in stuff, because I love talking to people about this sort of stuff, as you can see. So I think I'm going to leave it with that for the time being, unless, I find some sort of reversing age pill that will give me some more energy, then maybe I'll pick up another show. I know people have been asking me to come back to nonprofits. And,
that would be great.
And also do another route on, I've never done the Atheist Experience.
Oh,
so
man.
That would be something I'd
would
love
be
to do an
awesome.
episode of that. But, that's neither here nor there. If it happens, it happens. I'm not pushing for it or anything, because I honestly, my loyalty right now lies with this channel as a call-in show host.
Right? I do love this,
especially when I get to work with you, dude, and with Stacy. And it's so much fun. And Stacy and I do the Canadian takeover, right? The DC takeover of the show. And I think it's a lot of fun. But
it feels good whenever I see you two together, but I do feel like I have to say a little bit more. So that kind of gets weird for me. But no, seriously, it was wonderful doing this with you, man. I
always a pleasure.
I am excited that you are going to be here more. I always love listening to you and getting to hang out with you, man. And maybe, maybe we'll figure out some way to see each other in person again soon, man. It's been too fucking long.
Well,
but
most likely I'm going to be at the Baja.
AhaCon, okay. And I know
yeah,
Stacy and Dee are going to be there, so
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean,
And they're
I
going to
do
make
love
sure I
them.
go.
Yes, yes, they are very persuasive. Those two ladies,
They are.
but
I've met them and
we
had dinner with them. They're great folks.
we cannot go without sending out a massive thank you to all of the wonderful patrons who help keep this channel alive and shaken, like Eric Ozols, Ryan, Deneen Murphy, Dan D, Michael Wiseman, Cindy Plaza, Sunny Shell, Aaron Coalson, Phil Calderone, Amanda McLeod, and Logan Fisher. Thank you all so freaking much. And of course, don't forget, we have a bunch of wonderful shows here on Skeptic Haven pretty much every day of the week. In fact, we've got one on Tuesdays. That's the Secular Soapbox. On Thursdays, we've got the Sunny Spot. Saturday gives you both the Global Atheists and Women Atheists Unload. And then, of course, on Sunday, we're right freaking here taking your calls and chatting it up with you. Folks, as always, shout out to us in the comments below. Tell us what you liked, like Neil, for instance. Tell us what you didn't like the fact that I won't shut up and just end the show already. Wes is furiously pounding his keyboard. Right. I mean, come on. He's got Lego. I just got jokes about Wes. So, like, between the two, we know which one's better. But seriously, we love you all so much. And, until next Sunday, go out and do all the blasphemous things that Jesus died for. I mean, why waste it?
Exactly.
This is Skeptic Haven. Let's talk.